3 wins. 3 consecutive wins to open the season. Most managers would be smiling. Most dugouts would be loose, relaxed, riding the early momentum of a perfect start. Most organizations would be quietly celebrating the fact that their roster, the most expensive, most talent-loaded roster in baseball, was doing exactly what it was built to do. But Dave Roberts wasn't smiling. He was furious. Standing in front of a room full of reporters, microphones pointed at his face, cameras rolling, the manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers looked directly at the press and delivered a warning that nobody in that room expected to hear after 3 straight victories. You'd better not criticize. Not a request. Not a suggestion. A warning. The reporters went quiet. The cameras kept rolling. And anyone watching at home leaned forward in their seat, because when a manager who just won 3 games in a row walks into a press conference looking like he lost 3, something much bigger is happening beneath the surface. This wasn't emotion. This wasn't ego. This was a man protecting something. Something the outside world hadn't fully seen yet. Something that, once you understand it completely, will change how you look at this Dodgers team, and at the player at the center of everything, forever. To understand why a manager responds to victory with fury, you first have to understand the weight that sits on top of this particular team every single morning. The Los Angeles Dodgers do not enter a season with quiet ambition. They enter with obligation. The payroll, the roster construction, the international signings, the contracts that restructured how baseball thinks about money, all of it creates an expectation that is not written in any rulebook but is understood by everyone inside that organization from the first day of spring training. You are not here to compete. You are here to win a championship. Everything else is a footnote. That pressure doesn't disappear after 3 wins. In some ways, 3 wins makes it heavier. Because now the bar has been set publicly. Now the narrative has started. And in today's media environment, where every at-bat is analyzed, every lineup decision is debated, every substitution becomes a trending topic within minutes, the space between a hot start and a full-blown controversy is razor-thin. Roberts has managed this team long enough to know exactly how fast that shift happens. 1 cold week. 1 injury. 1 lineup decision that doesn't work out. And suddenly the same voices that were celebrating the hot start are questioning the entire foundation. He's lived through it. He knows the pattern. So when he stood in front of those reporters after win number 3, he wasn't reacting to what they had said. He was reacting to what he knew they were about to say. He was drawing a line before the first stone was thrown. Because inside that clubhouse, something is being built, quietly, carefully, methodically, that the outside world has not yet been given permission to fully see. Here is the detail that most coverage of this story completely overlooked. Roberts wasn't just angry at reporters. In the same breath, in the same press conference, he referenced something else, the reaction of people he called legends. Veterans of the sport. Men who had seen everything baseball has to offer across decades of playing, coaching, and watching at the highest level. And those men, according to Roberts, were amazed. Not impressed. Not complimentary. Amazed. That is a specific word. A careful word. Impressed is what you say when someone performs well. Amazed is what you say when someone does something you genuinely did not believe was possible. So what exactly are these legends seeing that is producing amazement rather than simple admiration? It starts, as almost every conversation about this team eventually starts, with preparation. The Dodgers under their current structure have built what insiders describe as the most systematically prepared organization in professional baseball. Not the most talented, though talent is obviously present in abundance. The most prepared. The most deliberate. The most focused on controlling every variable that can be controlled before the first pitch is thrown. Opposing scouts who have watched their spring training sessions describe a team that operates not like a collection of individual stars, but like a single organism with a shared nervous system. Every player knows their role. Every player knows the opposing pitcher's tendencies before stepping into the box. Every pitcher knows the opposing lineup's weaknesses before throwing a single warm-up pitch. This level of preparation doesn't happen by accident. It is the result of a culture, a standard, that has been set and maintained at the very top of the organization. And that standard has a face. It has a name. It has a routine that begins before sunrise and ends long after the stadium lights go dark. When you talk to people inside the Dodgers organization, coaches, teammates, support staff, about what has shifted in the culture since their most prominent player arrived, they don't talk about the home runs first. They talk about the mornings. They talk about walking into the facility at an hour when most players haven't even set their alarms, and finding him already there. Already working. Already deep into a preparation routine so detailed, so structured, so relentlessly consistent that it initially made teammates uncomfortable, not because it was aggressive or intimidating, but because it quietly, wordlessly held up a mirror. A mirror that asked a simple, uncomfortable question: are you doing enough? This is the power that transcends statistics. Any player can have a great game. Any player can hit a home run that makes the highlight reel and trends on social media for 48 hours. But the thing that separates the truly extraordinary from the merely excellent is what happens in the hours nobody is filming. The nutrition protocols. The sleep optimization. The study of opposing pitchers that goes beyond basic scouting reports into a granular, almost obsessive understanding of tendencies, patterns, and psychological tells. The physical maintenance routines that treat the body not as a tool to be used, but as a precision instrument to be protected. Veterans who have been in the sport for 20 years describe watching this routine and feeling a combination of admiration and something close to embarrassment, not because they were doing anything wrong, but because they had never seen anyone do it this right. That is what legends find amazing. Not the results. The process behind the results. Now we come back to the press conference. Now we come back to the fury. Because understanding the culture inside that clubhouse makes Robert's warning make complete sense. Here is the reality of managing a team that has built its identity around preparation, discipline, and long-term thinking. The media cycle does not care about long-term thinking. The media cycle cares about today. About this week. About the narrative that generates the most engagement before the next news cycle begins. And 3 wins, as good as they are, will eventually be followed by a loss. That is the nature of a 162-game season. No team wins every game. No roster, regardless of payroll or talent, maintains perfection across 6 months of competition. Roberts knows that the moment a loss arrives, the same voices celebrating the perfect start will reach for the simplest, most available explanation. And in today's environment, that explanation almost always involves questioning the manager's decisions or, worse, subtly undermining the confidence of players who are still building their rhythm. He has watched it happen to other teams. He has felt it happen to his own team in previous seasons. And he has seen, with his own eyes, what external criticism does to a clubhouse that is in the middle of trying to build something. It doesn't destroy teams all at once. It erodes them. Slowly. A question here. A headline there. A player who reads one too many takes on his phone before a game and steps into the box with 10% less mental clarity than he would have had otherwise. 10%, in this sport, is the difference between a base hit and a strikeout. Robert's warning wasn't about protecting himself. It was about protecting the environment, the specific, carefully constructed environment, that he and his players have spent months building. So what is the secret to this team's strength? What is the thing that has legends using the word amazed? It is not the roster alone. Other teams have spent money. Other teams have acquired talent. It is the alignment. The rarest thing in professional sports, rarer than a generational pitcher, rarer than a historic hitter, rarer even than a perfect trade deadline, is a team where every single person, from the front office to the coaching staff to the clubhouse attendant, is operating from the exact same set of values. Values around preparation. Values around accountability. Values around the understanding that individual glory means nothing if the team falls short in October. This alignment doesn't happen because of a motivational speech. It doesn't happen because of a team bonding trip or a locker room poster with an inspirational quote. It happens because one or two people inside the organization live those values so visibly, so consistently, so completely, that everyone around them has no choice but to either rise to meet that standard or quietly remove themselves from the environment. The Dodgers have that person. And every legend who has walked through their facility and come away amazed is responding to the same thing, the feeling of being inside an organization where the standard is not posted on a wall, but lived out in real time, every single day, by the people who matter most. That is extraordinarily difficult to build. It is even more difficult to maintain across a full season, when fatigue sets in, when injuries disrupt plans, when the outside noise gets loud. Which is exactly why Robert stood in front of those cameras and drew his line. Because protecting that culture is not a secondary concern. It is the primary job. The wins are a byproduct of the culture. Protect the culture, and the wins will follow. Allow the culture to be chipped away by outside criticism, and no amount of talent on the roster will save you when October arrives. 3 wins. A furious manager. Legends who can't hide their amazement. On the surface, it looks like a story about a hot start and a coach with a short temper. But underneath it, underneath the headlines and the press conference clips and the social media debates, it is a story about something the sport rarely gets to witness at this scale. A team that has genuinely figured something out. Not a formula. Not a system. Not a cheat code buried in advanced analytics. But something older and simpler and far more difficult to replicate, a shared belief that the way you prepare is the way you perform. That the habits you build in private become the results you produce in public. That discipline is not a constraint on greatness, but the very foundation it stands on. The legends who walk through that facility and come away amazed are not amazed by the payroll. They are amazed because they spent their entire careers chasing exactly this, a group of people who have stopped separating the work from the result, stopped treating preparation as a chore and performance as the reward, and started understanding that they are the same thing. Roberts doesn't need the outside world to understand this yet. He just needs them to stay out of the way long enough to let it grow. 3 wins is not a championship. But it is proof that the foundation is holding. And if it keeps holding, if the culture stays intact, if the standard is maintained through the losses that will inevitably come, through the injuries and the slumps and the long road trips in September, then what this team produces in October won't just amaze the legends. It will redefine what people believe is possible. And it will all trace back, quietly, without fanfare, in the way that real things always do, to the mornings. To the routines. To the player who was already in the facility before anyone else arrived, doing the work that nobody films, building the standard that everyone else eventually had to rise to meet. That is the secret. That has always been the secret.